All right, this is your Mountain State update for January 15th, 2017. The last episode of Mountain State Update with President Obama in place.
Indeed.
So that's interesting.
That is interesting.
Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Mountain State Up and check out old episodes on YouTube. I'm John Cantees, and today I'm being joined by public news correspondent Dan Heyman.
Greetings.
Executive Director of the West Virginia Center of Budget and Policy, Ted Beottner's here.
Hey, how you doing?
I got through that whole title without looking at anything. I'm good now.
Right, John, you're doing good.
And Mike Pushkin,
Hello.
delegate for 37th District, correct?
Yes, the
All right.
third, the district that we're in.
Yes. My favorite one.
He is our delegate.
All right, guys.
Turn him up a little
Currently, yes. If you are where you're residing right now, currently,
Yes.
I am your delegate.
bit. Yes.
Thanks for that.
Actually, I think I'm across the river, so I don't think you cross the elk.
I'm on this side of the river right now.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing this morning?
Good. It's rainy and drizzly, but hey, it's January, so
Right.
can't complain too much.
So this is the last show we're doing with the President Obama.
Indeed.
And I thought it would be interesting to just briefly, I know it's impossible to do it briefly, but I'm just saying it anyway.
Especially with Dan here.
Right. But let's try our best.
Shot. Yeah. That's brief is shot to hell.
Well, let's do it moderately briefly. Just take a look at how we think Obama's going to be remembered. There were a lot of ups, a lot of downs. He chose his battles, I would say maybe a little too conservatively. I figure people in the room probably disagree with that. But he's definitely spent, I think we all agree, he spent a large chunk of his political capital right out of the gate on the Affordable Care Act.
Well, he had 2 years when he had Congress, had Democrats in the House and the Senate.
Right.
So it makes sense for him to push his big legislative achievements. And in fact,
Sure.
my sense is that there was definitely some legislative triage there. That, for example, they knew that they had the executive authority to do the Clean Power Plan or to address climate change under the Clean Air Act. So they decided not to pursue legislation on that and instead pursue health care and Wall Street reform and a number of other things because they only had so much time they could get things done. Given that, I think that I don't think anybody will disagree with me on that. That he is certainly the most legislatively or in terms of policy, the most got the most done of any president in our lifetime. And I think he will be remembered as one of the finest presidents in the post-World War II era. I mean, I think he's right up there.
If you had to give him a letter grade, what would you say?
I'd give him an A.
You give him an A minus?
Easily.
A plus?
Hard
Regular.
to say plus or minus. That might take a few years.
Yeah.
But I definitely think he's high on the list. Now, one of the things that's going to be important to see that would give him, a minus or a plus, and this is kind of out of his hands, but that's the nature of the presidency, is often out of your hands, is how much of that remains. So, for example, the Congress is looking at repealing the Affordable Care Act. And how they do it, a lot of Obama's legacy, for example, is going to depend on how that plays out. Mm-hmm. And for example, if they try to I
don't think I think I see what you're saying, but I would say what Trump does from this point on, that shouldn't affect Obama, right? I mean, it's not Obama's fault.
Well, if for example the Trump administration kills the Iran deal, or if the Trump administration kills the Paris Climate Accord,
That'll affect the
legacy of
the perceived legacy.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I mean, and I think that, for example, if you just look at it in terms of you just hit the highlights. So you've got the Affordable Care Act. I've already mentioned the nuclear deal with Iran, which a lot of people hate, but which I like. The Paris Climate Accords and the Clean Power Plan. Wall Street reform, which is gonna improve our view of Wall Street reform, unless it's undone, is going to improve over time because it contains things like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Volcker Rule and some things that are going to work well. Dealing with the economic crisis, dealing with the wars I think he's been a very consequential, very effective, and productive, progressive president. So,
Ted, what do you think?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think history's going to tell this story a lot better than we can now.
Sure,
good point.
I don't think.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
suck at predictive power, too.
Well,
so.
I'm not really asking you to predict. That's just kind of what your take.
I think overall, relative to other presidents, he's been really well. He's done a really good job. Very impressed with some of the things that Dan talked about it too. I think the one thing that was really missing from me, when I was at his inauguration in 2008, and he brought all this inspiration and change. I don't think a lot of that transcended through the 8 years he was in office.
Yeah.
I never felt challenged, or I never saw a generation being challenged to seek a big, huge goal, like putting a man on the moon, like a new frontierism or an FDR New Deal. We did not get like an FDR Part 2.
Right.
And I think for a lot of progressives
And
like
we
me, we were looking for that. We were
Right.
looking for like a WPA. Let's do 100% renewable energy by 2030. Let's challenge the next generation to get
Infrastructure would have been nice.
Yeah, we never. So he did have 2 years to basically do that,
Right.
as Dan talked about earlier. But to me, that was the missing element. I really wanted him to challenge people, to give that Kennedy speech. Ask not.
I agree.
And that was the part that was missing for me. There's tons of things that I think he could have done. The healthcare thing is a huge debate. At that time, I was like, jobs, jobs, jobs. I love, universal healthcare too, but
Right.
this is going to matter more politically down the road for him.
I mean, if you guys remember, he spent almost that whole 2-year period on the Affordable Care Act, debating it and starting over and debating it and starting over.
He pivoted to deficit reduction for like 2 or 3 years, and I thought that just led into a spiral. I thought that was very bad. He always wants to bring everybody together.
He kept giving the Republicans inches, and they kept taking miles. And then
he doesn't. I think he didn't want to lead as much as that he could have. He always wanted to move the goalposts as he was talking. I thought that was But all that being said, I think as a person and as a family, as a dad, I think he is an inspiration to almost anybody. Michelle, his family. I mean, they are just
class act.
Well,
exactly. And I think that
headline.
And now we're going into someone that's the complete opposite that I have to tell my kids about. Like, hey, don't pay attention to the president. Don't talk like him. Don't use rude language. Don't be a bigot. Those are the types of things I'm going to have to tell my kids over the
Don't
next
be like
4
the
years.
president.
Yeah.
Right. That's a weird thing to
I
have to
never
say
would
to
have to
kids.
say that about like H.W. Bush or.
So if you were to give him a letter grade, what do you think you'd give him?
I would say B-.
Okay.
I
think that's probably
I would
closer
say
to where
I would
I'm
have to
at.
go back to like JFK, FDR, obviously. He's
Well, I don't think JFK. I mean, Mike has. I don't want to stop Mike from talking here because he hasn't weighed in yet. But
we'll get him.
I mean,
I've been quiet on purpose over here.
Yeah, I think JFK is a little overrated, and most of his actual legislative accomplishments happened under LBJ. But
He
then
wasn't in there very long.
LBJ's record, of course, is blotted by Vietnam.
But he didn't start
so.
any new program. Like there was no Peace Corps. There was no huge initiative that's ongoing outside of like
ACA. Yeah.
that. The
we'll
ACA
see
is
how
a
long that
patchwork
lasts.
of different programs.
Right.
that
There is
isn't
something else
really
I want to talk about him personally, but
We'll get
let's
there.
let Mike.
I guess
But I
I'll
am
be,
very sad to see him go. I just want to make that
I
clear.
agree. I agree. I think we're all. Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. Mike,
I guess I'll be the Debbie Downer in the room.
Oh, here we go.
Say that from a political standpoint, and I am an elected official here in the state of West Virginia, where he's probably the most popular outgoing president nationally we've ever seen. I mean, he's leaving office with 57% approval rating.
It's comparable to Bill
but
Clinton.
that is all coastal.
Right.
And if you look at in this state, he's very, very unpopular for a lot of different reasons. Some of which being EPA regulations, and a lot of it being other factors. But if you look at the amount of just throughout the country, how many state legislatures have gone red in the past 8 years,
And governors have flipped.
We've lost a lot of seats, and I'm not saying that is the fault of the president. I'd say that the DNC under his watch has been definitely top down, and haven't really done a good job of
a disconnection group for sure.
of building the base and building a bench from the bottom, and making sure we hold on to these seats in local races.
Procedurally,
That's one legacy we're going to see.
So if you were to give him a letter grade, what do you think you would say?
I'm not going to give him a letter grade.
Really? You give him like a
Beg off.
an I, like incomplete.
Pass, fail. You're not going to give him
Withdrawal. I'm just kidding.
Withdrawal.
I think Trump a withdrawal.
Please.
I mean, I think that he was hamstringed from the beginning because there were a lot of people who did not accept him as a legitimate president from the get-go. And he had a lot of forces fighting against him, and he was still able to get a lot of very positive things done. You know, he stopped enforcing the Defense of Marriage Act, which is a big thing for a lot of folks in this country, and because that led to
that's a classic
that led to marriage equality
to me.
You know, there was a lot of cultural changes that happened, a lot of positive cultural changes that happened under his presidency. I think that
can reverse
this country
that
could very
Yeah.
be.
Right.
I don't think they're going to reverse that. I don't.
But
think
it's
they
not
will.
legislatively; it was Supreme Court. That's the
Well, but that was a classic sort of Obama situation where what he did was it was kind of grudging, like people were saying, you need to do this, and then he kind of let it happen, and then it was a breakthrough when it did happen. So there's a lot of criticism of him, like Ted was saying.
He was a little
that
late
he
to
was
marriage
a little
equality,
late
too.
to the party,
Right.
but I think that
Once it no longer posed a political threat to him
he
whatsoever,
wanted
he
to
was
be
fine
careful,
with it.
and
Right.
but the result of that,
Which I understand. You know,
the result of that politically, and this is maybe the historian's viewpoint, is that, and I'm expecting that this is what history is going to say, is that when he made these changes, the changes are going to stick. Now that's the caveat we have to use there, is that this is now we're going to see what happens.
I think I'm
under
largely
Trump.
with Ted on Obama. As of now, like we all said, 2-3 years from now, looking back is when we're going to have a clearer picture.
Right.
But right now, I see him as a mixed character. I see he has expanded NSA spying. The Fourth Amendment, Bush got the wheels turning on this, but he did not slow it down. He sped it up. The Fourth Amendment's basically gone. But then you turn around
it's
and
not
you got
gone. It's,
Well,
I mean, it's certainly
drones?
under. It's certainly
drone
under.
strikes were all over the world
in
now.
terms of the national security state, yes.
We
But
kill
in
American
terms of-
citizens overseas.
In terms of civil justice or in terms of domestic justice,
If someone says,
court system, we
it to
still
the
have
right-
an independent judiciary. We still have due process. I mean, we have all the problems with that. But
if
but
the
it's
right
not
person
like,
thinks you might possibly be a threat in a national security way, your Fourth Amendment's gone.
yeah, but that's
That's what I'm talking about.
yeah, okay.
And I don't like
I
that.
mean, the national security state. Okay, I mean,
Now,
I'll buy
but then,
that.
but
that's a
then,
narrow
but then you turn
case.
around and you see the Paris Agreement. You see the Iran deal. You see the Affordable Care Act, which didn't. My only problem with the Affordable Care Act was it started out with something that really would have maybe fixed everything, the public option. And he didn't have support for it. And you'd say, well, the blue dog Democrats and all these Democrats from red states, they got in the way. And that's a fair point. But what he should have done is pulled an LBJ or an FDR and pulled these people into his office and said, listen, if you don't support my bill, we're going to fund your primary opponent. And you're going to get primary like FDR and LBJ. That's what they did. They got these votes by the scruff of the neck, one by one. They found out what these people needed and their personal careers, gave it to him in exchange for a vote for the thing that he wanted to pass. He didn't do a lot of that. And
a lot of people lost their general election bids right after that.
Well, I think he's going to look back. Like he should have used reconciliation at a much earlier process when debating the Affordable Care Act and debating the stimulus bill. He tried to get people included in those bills early on,
rather than
thinking politically. When the Affordable Care Act passed, I'm like, politically, that did very little. I mean, just not forget the human cost and people dying without health insurance for a minute.
And it
Well,
created
but
a
it was a
football.
great-
It
there
created
was
a
a
football
great-
for the next decade for everyone to play with too, which
Yeah.
you shouldn't have done. It's a
How many
complicated.
times? I just got a question for you. How many times did Congress vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act?
I think
40.
it's-
I think 50. I think we're
So
up
they
to 50.
voted that many times to repeal it, and now that they can repeal it, they don't have a plan.
They have no idea what to do.
To me, that just shows that they were playing games. I mean, obviously
yeah.
they're playing games the entire time. It's like you vote 50-some times to repeal something, but you didn't have a plan. I mean, they had plenty of time to come up with another plan.
Yeah.
They've been voting to repeal it for the past 6 years.
And
Maybe it's
not
because
like-
they came up with the plan, Romney Care. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Newt Gingrich, Romney. Really?
Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, the Heritage
Heritage
Foundation.
Foundation.
And I would throw one little thing in that no one talks about for some reason that Obama's been doing a lot of this second term, which I like a lot. And he's been quietly, it's not pardoning, but it's when you let people out, but
Right.
it's still on the record. What's that called? Starts with a C. Commuting.
Clemency.
He's been commuting sentences for nonviolent drug offenders all over
Right.
the country. He's just been
Right.
letting them he looks into their files and he says, okay, this guy's not a threat to society.
Right,
He needs to
but
go.
you know,
and he's
this
done that
is like-
1,100 times now.
This is like Mike's point about
Which I like a lot.
not enforcing, the what was it, the DOMA or whatever.
They stopped enforcing that.
Stopped enforcing DOMA is he did that while the nation was moving in that direction. Well, the nation is moving to reassess criminal justice, especially the racial aspects of criminal justice, and the notion of locking up nonviolent drug offenders is something that we're seeing a gradual but deep-seated movement in this country to reassess some of that. So Obama, he doesn't, it's not flashy, it's not, it's not a big agenda item that he's drawn Ted's kind of attention to or challenging people on, but he is moving that forward in a way that I think is productive. And I think that that's his style. I mean, that's this is who he is. And you can get a lot done. Robert Byrd's admonition is you can get a lot done if you don't care who gets the credit. And I mean, there was an interesting, we were talking about the stimulus for a minute. There was an interesting point where I think it was Rahm Emanuel was talking about the stimulus, and he said, look, we're forgiving payroll taxes for people, Medicare, Medicaid taxes, all of FICA that's being taken out of your taxes, your paycheck, and we're just not going to take that out for whatever it was, a year.
Right.
I forget exactly how long it was. And this is we're going to do this in order to stimulate the economy. And Rahm Emanuel jumped up and down and was pulling his hair out and said, look, you need to take that money and send people a check so that we can point to that and say, you got a check that's stimulating the economy, for political reasons. But Obama didn't do it that way. He did it in a way that was much quieter, that was much more sort of easy to do. It sort of slipped it in and had a direct, immediate impact on the economy, but didn't get a lot of political credit for it. And that's the man's style. I mean, there's some other things I can say about him as a person, but I've been talking enough. So.
Well, as a person, we all, I think if you view Obama as a person and you're really using your critical thinking and you're being honest with yourself, the guy was a class act. Maybe two classes.
That's what I'm going to miss
Honestly,
more than anything. I'm not talking about politics. You're just like, when he gave that farewell address the other night, it was something that, whether you love him or hate him, the guy had class.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way that he handled himself, and
Joe
the
Biden,
things that he
too.
said, it was inspirational. And then compared that
Interesting
to you
character,
compare
yeah.
that to our incoming president, and you just cringe when he opens his mouth.
Right.
When
Now-
he's screaming at CNN, I won't answer a question from CNN,
Right,
and then
right.
moves to Breitbart.
Right.
That was the next journalist.
CNN,
that
you're fake news.
CNN,
Now
I can't
Breitbart,
talk
how's
to
it
you,
going?
But he talks to
Yeah,
Breitbart.
right.
That's troublesome to
Well,
me.
and that's the nature of American politics, is a pendulum that swings back and forth. And a lot of people were critical of Obama. People like Maureen Dowd were critical of Obama for being cool and cerebral. The Mr. Spock of American politics, and so they went for someone who's all gut and all mouth. He's got no filters, and ebullient,
and that's entertaining and silly, and we make fun of it at this stage of the game. But 2 or 3 years from now, when he's having high stakes meetings with people, and when he's having conversations with people where the consequences are very high and the stakes are very high, and he starts running off at the mouth, this isn't going to be funny. This is going to stop being funny real quick, I imagine, in this
For me, it
presidency.
stopped being funny a long time ago.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
for the average, for the person who isn't a junkie
Well,
like
we're
us.
going to have to see about that. But, under Obama, for example, I saw a headline. I don't know if this is true. I don't know how you measure it, really. But it said that I think in general, the general pattern is true, that he had fewer scandals, in 8 years than Trump has had since being elected.
Sure. That makes sense.
And the one that I think is going to be,
And at the same time, the machine that was trying to pin him for something was way more effective than the machine that's trying to pin Trump for something.
Yeah.
And that ratio is still true, which
I think so.
puts even more gravity on that
And
statement.
the other thing that I think that we're gonna.
I think one thing that's important to bring up is nobody saw the backlash too. So you saw Senator Manchin supporting Obama,
Right.
all that stuff. No, if you look at back where we were, if you're driving on the highway right out here, you saw signs that said carbon neutral coal. They're probably embarrassed that they ever had to even say that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're so far beyond that now. I mean, if you look at where we were headed towards a cap and trade or a carbon tax. That was the consensus. McCain and Sarah Palin had a cap and trade bill on their website when they were running for president. That's where the issue was.
We were going to get some form of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why. And
it was
I
a question of what kind of cap and trade bill.
And the number one thing is, I think the two big problems were, one, a completely misdiagnosis of the backlash that was going to occur at one end. I didn't see it. I never saw anybody that said, hey, there's going to be this massive backlash, because I thought we were heading to sort of a new paradigm in American politics, and we weren't.
We still might be, except I think we're going to be dragged into it kicking and screaming.
And the second misdiagnosis,
instead of gracefully walking into it.
No, I agree. And the second misdiagnosis is who is the Democratic Party coalition,
Right.
and that was I was at a conference 2 years ago, and they were saying, that basically, that states like West Virginia, Ohio, you're done. We're moving into this pluralistic coalition of elites on, the sides, very diverse, which I'm all for. But in states like West Virginia, that's kind of it's like
for a national election, it's a mistake to leave.
It's not going to help West Virginia in a lot of ways.
Well, and if you're running for president, it's a mistake to leave these people out of the conversation, because look what happened. Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio all went for Trump, and that now
Obama during the whole last kept thinking like we can just keep bringing people together, and I felt like he never really tried to do that in a way that was going to build a bigger coalition that he did at the very beginning, because a lot of those voters.
Well, his campaigns were all geniusly ran.
That's what I'm trying to say. That energy and enthusiasm and vision did not translate into policy.
Right. And he had an interview with someone, I forget who it was, and he said basically that he was able to shape public opinion very well, very effectively while he was campaigning. But there were long stretches of time while he was governing that the public he was losing that public opinion edge big time. And I think it's a shame that he's really responsible for both, because he really shouldn't have to be. He should just be able to do his job, and public opinion should be able to follow along, but they don't.
He didn't realize where he was either. We've seen 30 years of growing inequality, and a lot of people, real wages in West Virginia have declined for a majority of workers over the last 30 years. That was blowing up when he was getting ready to take office. And me too, I didn't see it now. Now it's to the point where I think
it didn't get totally reversed under Obama, so now he's getting blamed for it.
Yeah, that's Democrats. You can't be, half for billionaires and millionaires and half for working families. That era is over.
Nailed it.
And Democrats in this state, too, need to quit. You either are for corporations and are for big money politics.
If a corporatist runs against a corporatist, the better corporatist is going to win.
Because
if
they're
you're
better
half
on the
corporatist, you might as well just quit.
Because they'll use social issues to divide people.
Right, I agree. That leads me to a little story that I saw yesterday. There was a prescription drug bill that Bernie Sanders, a couple other people put together, and it was killed by Democrats. And what it was it was intended to lower prescription drug prices by letting us import drugs from Canada. Okay? And so we have Cory Booker, we have Bob Menendez, we have Patty Murray. All these people get money from Big Pharma. Lots of it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
A lot of the people that voted for the amendment also get money for Big Pharma.
Well, fine. But I'm just saying.
That's the
13 Democrats
that's one thing.
You got to look at
it.
what states they represent. That's what the key is. They're voting. There's a lot of pharmaceutical companies that are located in New Jersey.
Yep, that's
Right.
And that probably influenced.
Which is why.
And I'm not
Cory
making
Booker
excuses for anybody. I'm just saying that.
Bob
I mean,
Menendez
you know what? A lot of people
Booker,
that voted on either side of that amendment get a lot of money from Big Pharma.
Right.
And that's a shame.
Sure.
But I think what influenced Senator Booker's vote, and what Menendez, where's he from?
He's from New Jersey.
He's from New Jersey also. I think what influenced their vote more than that was that they represent New Jersey, where a lot of these companies are headquartered.
That comes back to what we just said earlier, too.
But what Cory Booker said was his reason for voting against it. Now, Cory Booker, I like this guy overall. I was hoping he would be Hillary's VP, But anyway, so what he said was...
I was always rooting for Al Franken.
I love it. Yeah,
I like Sherrod Brown.
Anybody but Tim Kaine would have been great. But anyway. So Cory Booker said his reason for voting against this was he was worrying about safety standards. He's worrying about these drugs are coming from Canada. We don't know about Canada.
Canada does not have
that's
safe drugs.
nonsense.
If you look
That's
into this for
nonsense.
more than 5 seconds,
I don't believe that for a second.
That's what he said.
Really, I know that's what he said, but I don't believe that
Oh,
that's
right,
what his
right.
real reason was. I
Right,
think
right,
the
right.
reason is because he's from New Jersey, and that's where a lot of these companies, New Jersey,
You're right.
Now,
pharmaceutical companies are big in
I
New Jersey.
think that
But that's
we
me and
run
Ted's
the
problem
risk.
here is that-
we run the
Exactly.
risk as Democrats of, if we say we're never going to support Cory Booker now because of this.
right.
And that's something in
start
today's
beating
politics.
ourselves.
I mean, that's something I really have started. I mean, bothers me about the
think that would be a
political climate
mistake.
these days. Is either you're completely with me or you're against me, and everybody has this all or nothing. And that's not how we govern the United States. We have a
That's right.
democracy, and we
You're right.
govern based on compromises. And
Right, but
nobody
it's-
ever when two people walk away from the table and they're both and they're both dissatisfied, they probably reached a decent compromise.
But I agree with
true.
that, but
Because
I think-
nobody's
I think
going
you
to
have to
believe.
lead them.
Nobody is going to agree with
Yeah.
me on everything completely. It's just how it is.
Well, and that gets back to Obama, because I think that one of the things that was almost a detriment, he was almost too good at campaigning, because he raised all these expectations.
Mm-hmm.
He said, hope and change, and the audacity of hope, and and all of the things that were really, yes we can, and all of the things that were inspirational about him gave him the air of being a transformational figure. And really, politically, I mean, personally, in a way, of course, being the first African American president, that is transformational. But politically, he's not. His style and his philosophy was not transformational. It was evolutionary.
It was incremental.
Well, he was a very
Incrementalist,
pragmatic
right.
person, but I think there's a difference between negotiating and get to a point. I mean, I think that's where
Is that the last Coltrane?
Yeah, that's one of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is the first of many, many more that you're going to see going up and down this road.
Yes, right. Yeah, up and down the
And it
Kanawha
always
River.
happens during my show, which is interesting.
Of course.
I love hearing that train. If I'm listening to somebody's show and I hear that train over the radio, it's I don't know.
Well, it's a sign.
like it.
Sign
I
of
like
this
it.
is we live in a real place, and this is.
And it sounds really cool.
Right. So,
But
Mike,
it would be nice for like Cory
anyway,
Booker or
you were
Mendez to
saying.
say, you know what, I have a lot of pharmaceutical industries in my state. They've been
Yeah.
big supporters, and that's why I can't just be honest.
right.
Yeah.
What's wrong with being honest?
I wouldn't. I mean, that would. You would have
That
to be
would
careful
help.
about how you word that. But I wouldn't necessarily hate him because of
No,
that.
I would-
You know what I mean? Like, give me.
rather be
I'm an adult.
honest.
You don't have to wrap everything in cheese for me to eat it. You know what I mean? Just give me the truth here. All right.
I don't have to wrap everything. One quick thing that I want to point out about Obama, and I think his interaction with kids, a lot of people have been commenting about this, that he really likes kids and he enjoys being around them. There is a moment which is going to stick in my memory forever, which is when he had, I think it was the son of a Marine, and had a Marine family in the Oval Office, and there was this little black boy who said, your hair is like mine. Mm-hmm. And Obama bends down and said, yeah, touch it, dude. It's just like yours. And there's this famous picture of him bending down so the little
I think
boy
I've seen that picture,
can touch
yeah.
his hair.
Yeah, yeah.
That is one of the things that we are going to be seeing. I mean, they're already naming elementary schools after the
Well,
guy.
that's the thing that's going to be in textbooks, pictures like that.
Yeah,
Right.
and that is genuinely transformational, and I don't think that anyone's ever going to take that away from him.
Oh no, he's just a completely beautiful, incredible person as a human being.
And the way
Absolutely.
that he has sort of reshaped our view of who can be an effective leader, who we look up to, represented. I mean, this wouldn't have been important for anybody in this room, growing up, but for an African American or for any person of color or for an immigrant.
anyone that feels on the outside.
I think you have to be careful. Do you guys read Ta-Nehisi Coates' article in The Atlantic about that? I mean, he also said that, like, if he wasn't like Harvard Law Review, if he didn't
Right.
have all these steps or
Sure.
these things in his quivers or whatever they are,
then he wouldn't be able to be on that.
It'd be very
Kind of like
difficult.
when Chris Rock
Yeah.
says, I'm a famous comedian. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm rich as can be. I live next to a dentist.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that same dynamic. But but your point is still true. Absolutely.
Well, and that's, yes. Well, of course, any black person has to be twice as good. Any woman has to be twice as good as a man.
And could you imagine if 8 years ago There were allegations that hostile foreign government hacked the RNC to help Obama. What the reaction to that would have been?
God.
He wouldn't have gotten nearly the benefit of the doubt that our president-elect has got.
I do remember in 2012, Democrats were giving Romney a bunch of guff for talking about Russia like they were this big
I remember
enemy.
that.
And now all of a sudden,
they were a little
Democrats
wrong about
are shaking their boots.
I guess
over
Romney
Russia.
was right about Russia, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's another thing you have to give Obama too. I mean, to
Everybody's
come into
wrong about
office
Russia.
with all that vitriolic hate and the way he handled himself was just pretty amazing. I mean, like he didn't.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, like that's.
He didn't punch anybody in the face. That's amazing. It really is.
I mean, yeah.
With the
I mean,
way he was being
handled
treated.
himself really well, like beyond any capacity that I think I would.
Yeah. Well, that gets back to the criticism of him for being cool and cerebral, and for not including the Washington insiders and schmoozing up the members of Congress. There's a lot of criticism him for, like you were saying, it didn't like Lyndon Johnson would grab people by the lapel and punch them in the chest with a finger the size of a sausage, just say, I want you to vote this way. Well,
But they would do
Obama didn't do that, and part of the reason he didn't do that
That's
is
just not his
because-
style.
Right, I know.
That's
Well,
Lyndon Johnson's style.
Yeah, but the reason that his style is that way is in part because growing up as an African American, he learned to be reserved. He learned to be careful and to be and to keep his counsel, to not tell people what he thinks, what he was thinking deep down, until he had sort of filtered it through, the rational process of thinking, how is the best way to handle this? So now, of course, we're going to have a president who doesn't filter anything.
Right. And which a perfect example of that was just recently.
I've heard, by the way, that Donald Trump believes in trickle-down economics.
Well, we'll see. I think he believes in trickle-down Trump.
I get it.
But
There's a lot of members of the West Virginia legislature too that believe that, right, Mike?
What's that?
Trickle down economics. We just give more money and power.
I think Dan was making a
Making a
pee-pee
funny
joke.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, the golden shower.
oh,
I just...
it was all right. It was okay, Dan.
See, I'm quick. I'm a member of the legislature.
I played my. Yeah. See. Right.
Are you guys quick on the uptake? You good on your feet? Down on the floor of the
Oh
House
yeah,
of
each and every
Delegates?
one of us.
Each and every
Each
one
and
of
every
you.
one of us. Yeah.
Now, John
Yeah.
Lewis. Let's talk about this John Lewis thing real quick, and then we'll get into some West Virginia stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about. I mean, everybody is like, oh, Donald Trump and John Lewis. Oh, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Oh,
Well, welcome to the next 4 years. Sorry,
this is.
don't know what to tell you. It's, it's
well,
the
the
world
question
we're
is,
in.
how bad is it going to get? That's
Right.
the question. But go
And
ahead.
we're off to a bad start here. It seems John Lewis said Trump is not a legitimate president. He doesn't see Trump as a legitimate president. Probably shouldn't have said that.
However,
Nothing. It's
However.
nothing that Obama hadn't said about him 5,000 times.
by Donald Trump.
But
By Donald Trump,
Right.
who was the leader of the birther movement. Said he
So-
was sending detectives down to Hawaii to look for his birth certificate. Who tried to delegitimize the Obama presidency every step of the way. Okay, I can't.
He fostered a movement.
I can't really feel sorry for him if somebody says they don't see him as a.
Well, the other thing-
and that's John Lewis's right to say whatever he wants.
The other Sure. thing-
he's earned that right.
sure, I just mean
And he's done more. Congressman Lewis has done more to make America great
yeah.
than most folks that are serving in that body.
would ever dream
Yeah.
of. Well, I think the other thing that this says to me is that so the comparison to Obama. Okay, so people were criticizing Obama for not wearing a flag pin on his lapel early on in the presidency,
Or saluting
during
with
the
coffee in his
campaign,
hand.
or
Remember the
saluting
coffee?
with coffee in his hand.
coffee salute?
A lot of stuff that was kind of little petty stuff. But they said you should wear a flag pin in your lapel. You know what he did? He wore a flag.
he wore the
flag
biggest
pin.
flag pin ever made.
He put a flag pin in his lapel.
big
It's like,
one.
okay, no big deal.
Right.
Okay, I'll put in a lapel pin. He had a thick skin.
Right.
Right. This is not, to be president, to be an effective president, and Donald Trump is either going to figure this out or it's going to be, it's probably going to be a rough ride for 4 years.
This is how he campaigned. This is who won.
Yeah.
Okay. This is who got elected.
thin
That's how he
skin.
got elected. No, that's how he got elected, by tweeting what was ever on his mind and being very confrontational. And that's what's worked for him. You think he's going to change it?
No.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
And a lot of people like that about him. I'd say, a lot of
West Virginia.
probably a lot of people listening to this broadcast right now. We're in West Virginia. A lot of people like that about him.
Yeah.
I think,
but to be a president, you can't be easily offended. You
Right.
can't.
If you are, you're going to
can't
spend your
get-
whole presidency responding to people's tweets, right?
I think
you can't.
I think Bernie's had the best strategy personally. I know I'm sort of biased in that sense of saying like, hey, like if he's asked, are you going to work with the president? He's like, there are things that we might be able to work on, transportation if they don't privatize the roads. We could redo these awful trade agreements. If there are things like that's a much rhetorically, politically savvy way to discuss that. And just say,
I tell you, one of the best things that has come out of this whole election process is that Senator Sanders has really stepped up as a leader of the Democratic Party.
he's doing meetings
and
all
is
over the
saying,
country.
you're right. What he says is right on the money. Everything he's really stepped up.
And it seems like it's just so much easier. I've never run for public office. I probably never will. But it's got to be easier to do when you can just be yourself, and you're just not being a scumbag, and you're just doing what people expect you to do. And if you can't, then you explain why, and that's just the end of it. When you don't have to play a character.
That's what Donald Trump. I mean, that's the funny thing about Donald Trump is he is playing a character of being himself. I mean,
He's an exaggerated version of
he's
himself.
not consultant driven.
Bernie's
like
just
you're
being
saying.
a little old man,
who's cranky old,
he's just being a cranky old man
Jewish
who's-
guy from Vermont.
I guess he also says what's on his mind. For my,
what's
in
on
my
his mind
opinion,
is
what's on his
there's
mind
a
is a hell of a lot more sane and makes more sense
And
to
Joe
me.
Biden does a similar thing, and he has a similar effect. That's why he's very popular. People like him, even though not everyone agrees with him. You can't be vice president for 8 years and please everybody. But
And I think
a lot of people like him.
people like, and it's one of the reasons why Trump was so popular. People want somebody who's real now.
Yeah.
I think Bernie was popular here too at some extent.
He won every county.
Yeah,
I think.
he won. He had a lot,
Biden would be popular here.
And he came in here, Mike, you were there too. I mean, he came in here, it's like they asked me about climate change in the coal industry. I'm going to tell you the same thing I told an audience in San Francisco last week.
Right.
And that's the kind of realism and like people are tired.
People like to be
Yeah,
leveled
yeah,
with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People don't need to be agreed to at every point, at every turn.
Yeah.
I don't need as a voter as myself. I don't need someone. I liked Ron Paul. I didn't agree with about 60% of what he said, but I would rather him be president than just about any other Republican. Because even though I disagree with Ron Paul so much, I know what he's going to do. I know who he is.
Yeah.
I know he can be reasoned with, probably to an extent, but he can be reasoned with. He can be talked to. He'll listen. He's a human being. You know what I mean? And Bernie had that appeal here.
The irony
we're a
here
red
is
state.
that the incoming president, got elected because he presumably, or people felt like he was leveling with them. It felt like he was being just who he was. But now he's also terribly unpredictable. And I think that's going to be, a real issue, especially for our allies. Is, what is he going to say this week? Is he just going to say something different?
I have a feeling we're all going to be in D.C. this summer at some point for some
there's going to be all kinds of
intervention
stuff.
or something.
One of my favorite political cartoons of the campaign. It shows a hillside with a bunch of sheep on it. I don't know if you. And there's a big billboard, a big campaign billboard with a wolf.
Yeah.
And it says, "I'm going to eat you." And then the sheep are saying, "He really tells it like it is."
That's it, man.
Thank God we didn't elect a woman who used a server at her home for emails.
Right. That could have been a disaster.
Yeah.
So anyway, speaking of unpredictable, or maybe it is predictable. I'm not really sure. I want your all's take on it.
Right.
West Virginia budget.
I just want to say quickly.
Now we can talk.
I just want to say one thing about John Lewis.
Okay.
So
John Lewis.
Trump said that John Lewis was
not
all
even a word
talk,
anymore.
all talk and no action. And John Lewis, I just want to clarify this because it needs to be put on
Especially
the record.
on
is
Dr.
that-
King's birthday today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge to a bunch of state troopers who were going to beat him half to death because he wanted the right to vote. I mean, that doesn't count as action. I mean, this is, John Lewis has been productive and active his entire life at the risk of his own life. at his own, at the risk of his health and certainly at the risk of his position and career. So I just want to put that on
John
the
Lewis
record.
is from a southern state. Which state?
Georgia.
Is it?
Yeah, he's from Georgia.
Born in Alabama.
Donald Trump's if Donald Trump wants to pick a fight with Lewis, he will pay for it in one way or another. And I don't know if
Yeah,
I don't
but
know if
he
we're
ain't
talking
gonna.
about
Donald
general
Trump
election
ain't gonna,
or in Congress.
Donald Trump ain't going to pick up a lot of African American votes in Georgia. I mean, there's low cost.
Or
There's
any
a
other
low
state.
cost.
I don't know.
There's
I
a
don't know.
low cost to him.
He's liked nationally on quite a bit.
Well, that's true.
It's kind of
it's another.
He dropped the fight with McCain awfully quick because I think he realized there was potential loss, big losses there.
This is the thing about the guy.
I think he's going to drop this one too.
He can't. He doesn't. He's so thin-skinned, and he never. He will never back away from any idiotic Twitter battle.
Right.
Well, anyway, so let's go on.
The West Virginia budget is, I believe, $400 million shortfall. Am I right on that?
Yeah,
Or more than that now, maybe?
Could be
Give or
north.
take a few million.
So that's going to be looming over the whole session, I imagine. Everyone's
It
gonna
should be.
wondering what's going to be happening.
It should be.
You don't think it will be, Mike?
I can't guess what we're going to find. That should be the focus of the session. That's what we should be working on from day one. That's what we should have been working on 2 years ago. From day one. I think a lot of the other things that we've really wasted our time and then the people's time with is really frivolous when it comes here. We have to, figure out how this government's going to work for everybody.
Ted, talk about what you feel like the West Virginia Center of Budget and Policy's role is going to be with contributing to the upcoming session. I know that's an enormous question, but try to quantify what you think the main goal should be and what you think you can get done practically.
Well, I think it's to put out revenue options and look at alternatives that'll be talked about. We've gone up to legislature. I've had meetings, probably at least 20 or 30 over the last couple months. Asked, where's the first $100 million you would cut out of the budget? It's $400 million deficit. Give me the first 100. Can't get a straight question from anybody.
Yeah, straight answer.
Yeah, straight answer from the people that want to see all government, no tax increases. That's a serious issue. You can't come up with $100 million at least. It's come on, you guys.
And even if they
you
did,
don't want
that's
any tax
not
increases.
the end of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about if we continue down the path at West Virginia.
So, in other words, facts matter. I mean, that's the slogan from the blog.
I think out of that $400 million, we will be doing the work that we can through our campaign, the Protect West Virginia campaign. It's
a good campaign. It's an interesting. People ought to look that up.
We've done over 35 presentations over the last couple months, all around the state, to people who we normally don't talk to.
Yeah.
And the overwhelming majority of West Virginians, 70%, think that they were even willing to pay more in taxes if it didn't mean we're cutting K through 12 education, public
That's an
safety,
important
and
thing to know.
and that was a statewide poll.
70%. 70% of people, and you never get polls that say that many people.
Can we take
were
that to some of
favored.
these delegates that don't seem to understand that?
We've tried. I mean,
Because really, this is the battle here. Is
Unfortunately,
not,
a lot of them signed pledges to not raise any
Well,
taxes.
pledges-
under
Yeah,
any
you're not going to get. I mean,
And I don't want to raise taxes. Nobody wants to.
No one
raise
likes
taxes.
it.
Fact of the matter is, though, we've got a huge gaping hole in the budget, and we do need to start. We should have been doing this a couple years ago, going through every agency with a fine-tooth comb. And finding out where we've duplicated efforts, finding out where we can streamline, where we can make those savings. The people deserve that. We can run government more efficiently without harming those most vulnerable in our society. We need to do that. But even if we do that job perfectly and streamline this government, got it running like a well-oiled machine, we're not going to be able to cut $400 million out of the budget.
Yeah.
And you can't do that next year.
You can't do
either.
that. So we've got to come up with some compromises and come up with some ways to run
I mean,
our
one
government.
of the things that was interesting to me, I mean, and this is, this is maybe in Ted's bailiwick, but so West Virginia's state budget is looking at a $400 million shortfall. Most of that is because of drop off in severance taxes from natural gas, especially, but also from coal and from tax cuts.
I have a different perspective on that. Well, what you just last thing you said.
Well, go ahead.
Well, we look at how much the revenue that we lost when we cut the corporate net income tax. It's about the same size as the hole in the budget. Yeah. And I think at the time, it was done with the best intentions. We think this is going to be a boost to the economy. It's going to attract businesses here. It's going to create jobs. And let's go back and look at it. We did that, 10 years ago? It hasn't worked.
Well, there was one where, I mean, if you look at the academic research, which we tried to talk about at that time and looked at other states, there's no tax cut pays for itself. There is no evidence of that. So if you think it's going to boost growth, it would have to pay for itself.
That's what I'm saying. Where'd this idea come from where we're going to cut taxes and that's going to equal growth?
Art Laffer. Our supply side economics started.
Yeah, I mean,
if you give rich people tax breaks, they tend to save the money. If I give
buy another yacht.
If I give low income people tax credits, guess what they do? They spend it immediately.
Right.
Yeah. Well, but this is there's a certain amount of sociology to understand here, which is that if you give people a justification for doing something they want to do, then they have a tendency to believe it. If you give them a justification for doing something they don't want to do, then they find it harder to believe. But I mean, my broader point is that we have a $400 million shortfall in the state budget, and it's a sign of just how out of balance our tax system is, how disconnected from the real economy our state tax system is, that we actually have a moderate unemployment rate. I mean, you expect a budget deficit of this size in a time of real recession.
But you're also
the economy
fewer people are employed in West Virginia today than 2006 before the tax cuts. I'm going to say it again. Fewer people are employed in West Virginia today than before the tax cuts. So obviously,
10 years ago.
Yes, 2000 private sector job growth is below where it was before the tax cuts. Just let that sink in for a minute. I mean, obviously the expansionary effects of corporate income taxes, which mostly all flow out of the state, because Walmart, these multinational corporations, aren't located here. Why would they spend it here?
Right.
It's just all you do is walk through the logic, and it's like the average tax cut. That was given this year about $220.
And even if they do, so another Walmart, another 5 Walmarts.
Businesses need customers, not tax breaks.
Those aren't. I mean, I'm glad. I mean, those jobs are better than no jobs, but those aren't. I mean, what we really need, right? What we really need is something comparable to the jobs that you used to be able to get 20, 30 years ago before NAFTA, when you could come out of high school and you could go work at some manufacturing place.
I saw an interesting
family.
chart. I'll try and put this up on the Twitter feed. It was about the decline in American manufacturing jobs, and I had this assumption that had happened steadily over 30 years or something, that ever since NAFTA that had been kind of declining and gradually. The truth is that what really happened is that there was a little bump, a couple of 2-3 decades ago, and then it really started to fall after 2000.
Well, also because of our trade deficit.
Recession. Yeah, the trade
deficit is what. I mean, it was actually about 15.5 million, pretty steady, and then the trade deficit.
And then it just really took a dive. And that's, helps explain why people were so upset about the decline of the traditional economy and the, these smokestack jobs and the, a working class white person can't support themselves anymore, and I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because I'm angry. It kind of helps explain that a little bit, because we did have a decline in those manufacturing jobs.
And to me, it is the policy priorities are
15 years ago.
If you look at the corporate tax cuts, about 225 million, probably closer to 250. If you just look at that, what could you do with that? Well, you could provide free tuition to all in-state residents in West Virginia. What would do more?
Yeah,
exactly. Having a well-educated, drug-free workforce is what's going to attract businesses.
Yeah, the number one.
Having good schools.
Okay, so how do we close this, gentlemen? Ted, Mike, how do we close this hole?
Let's end it on I think we close the show.
Close the show.
How do we close the hole? There's
it's going to be a combined effort, right? We all realize that. So the real question becomes, how do you get the people who are opposed to a combined effort to change their minds? To me, that seems like the real question. We have to get down to that.
It's going to be tough to get.
You have to realize they've made most of it's all been major cuts. So if we're already negotiating with ourselves, we're going to do 50-50. I mean, we've already cut $600 million over. I mean, that's what Governor Tomlin said. It's like, and we've raised the tobacco tax, which was the only one that was about 90 million.
I'm just not a big fan of the regressive tax that have been floated around. I wasn't a big fan of the tobacco tax, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's like, so we cut all these, corporate net income tax. We eliminated the business franchise tax. We make all these, cut the corporate taxes, and then we want to fix, we want to make up the difference on cigarette smokers and people who drink Mountain Dew. I mean, that doesn't seem very fair to me.
I think that's where you can look at a TC. And also, I mean, those were the progressive taxes, those corporate income, those were the progressive ones that are paid by high-income people.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can
So you, ideally, in your vision, you'd roll back some of those tax cuts.
I think, Mike, I think not enough is being done for small businesses. So if you want to keep some of the business tax cuts for your small businesses, your entrepreneurs, I think that's an okay thing. But I think on top, you have to leave them there. I think over the course, I think you have to set things in motion to save money, as Mike said, in the long run. Like our juvenile justice system, if they're treated in the community, it's $80 a day. If they're treated at the Cone Center, it's $385 a day. There's
a lot of ways we could find a lot of savings
off,
if we ran government better, but that's not going to fix it completely.
It's not going to fix it next year.
We've really got to get creative. And to end on a positive note, I'm looking out this window here, and I see one of the most beautiful states in the country. Yeah. Really, and we're close to to most of the East Coast. We have so much going for us. If we could just think more creatively about what we could do to improve the quality of life and really make this a place where people want to live. If you got a place where people want to live, businesses can operate anywhere these days. They can operate anywhere, especially tech industry businesses.
Right.
We got to make this place more attractive, and that starts with public education.
Are there any bills?
We need revenue to do all those things.
Yeah.
That's
what bills do you see, Mike, that you would like to see come out in this session? Anything interesting, like marijuana legalization? Obviously, is staring us right in the face. There's a lot of revenues.
Medical have a chance, Mike?
We should. I don't know if it has a chance or not. I'm going to introduce it, and I hope it has a chance. And I hope we can have.
Did you introduce that last session?
I did not introduce medical. I was a co-sponsor. Yeah, I was a co-sponsor of medical.
Okay, so this one you think you might introduce it?
I think I'm going to introduce it.
Okay.
Yeah, medical.
Right.
And I've gone through, looked at what's worked and what hasn't worked in other states. We have all these other examples in other states. See where the mistakes were made. See what has worked, and that's why it's going to be a different bill from what we've had in the past.
So why medical instead of recreational? Would you say that's
I
just
think
out of practicality?
It's what most people are okay with medical. And really, there's a lot of people who could benefit from the medicinal purposes of whether they're people who are going through chemotherapy or people with Parkinson's disease. I mean, there's the proof's out there. There's a lot of people who could benefit from that. I think there's a lot of people who don't want to deny people who are suffering
it's a place to start, and it could
something
do
they
some
can
real
treat
good.
Speaking of places to start, maybe this is just me with my head in the clouds. Pardon the pun, but. Wouldn't it be maybe better to start off with a position of recreational and then maybe be willing to bargain down to medical instead of already coming in there?
No, I don't think so, because I don't think the political will is there for recreational, but I do think it is there for medical.
I don't think it is either.
And it's two different types of bills. I mean,
I don't see Speaker Armstead supporting medical.
Yeah, or either. I mean, frankly.
But I see the majority of the people in this state supporting it. And we're public
service.
The
state supports recreational.
It's like 40.
No, I think, but there's there's a lot of support for medical. I get phone calls, emails,
nationally,
messages every day in support of medical. I think there are a whole lot of people that would support medical, and there's a revenue to be made off medical too. You can tax it.
Just seems like there's so much more revenue to be made off recreational. And look what Colorado has done.
You can make a lot of revenue off medical.
I mean, geez.
And all the other jobs that come with it, whether it's research jobs, transportation jobs, security jobs, warehouses being rented.
And that's not counting the jobs that the revenue will generate.
Sessions could have a crackdown on all this, too. I mean, he has enormous... It's still illegal.
I know, yeah.
I mean, like, that's not always... It's illegal.
Right.
So if the Department of Justice wants to go after, they could...
Yeah, they could enforce it. But you know what? California's had medical marijuana since 1996, and no president has ever... Or no attorney general has.
It's been 20 years.
Yeah, no attorney general yet has enforced the federal law in California.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well,
that's not to say Jeff Sessions won't.
Yeah. He'll try. He'd like to. I mean, one quick thing I want to say. I've heard a lot of the state politicians they seem to be talking from the same general talking points. I mean, I've heard Jeff.
Imagine that.
Yeah, Jim Justice and Tim Armstead and, I think even Tomlin and, some of the other folks have been saying that one of the things we need is optimism. That we need to approach this with optimism. I agree with that. I don't think that's unreasonable. I also think one of the reasons for optimism, having to do with what Mike was talking about, is that we do have room for growth in tourism and in quality of life.
Yeah, but what out of all that doesn't require resources and money? So I'm not.
Right.
That's where my optimism goes downhill. Because
but we are
big vision, but we don't want to pay for it.
We are willing to spend money on on a tourism advertising campaign, and it seems to be working. And I think I give the legislature enough points for pragmatism that they may be willing to invest in that. And that's something that's good. And Jim Justice, obviously,
beyond what they've already done?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what he has in mind. But
that would mean a cut to something else. That's what I'm trying to say. Where are you going to cut to?
But that's...
They got to compensate.
Well, I mean, a medical marijuana, higher ed. And I mean, I think that...
This arithmetic really causes a problem with all the rhetoric. I'm always like,
oh yeah, I know.
Yeah. Well, facts matter. I mean, I'm in favor.
Optimism's still important, though.
I know that Mike has some reservations about this, but I think a soda tax is a possibility. I wouldn't mind another whack at the cigarette tax. I mean, I like the reason to do those. I'm not going to,
the reason to those are all regressive taxes that affect working people, affect poor people more than they affect.
True, but they will reduce state expenses in the long run because they'll reduce
and improve public health in the long run.
I don't know if they've ever been shown to reduce usage of these things.
Cigarette taxes certainly.
Yeah, they have, and
I think so.
When you reduce use,
teens don't smoke that much anymore. If you, compared when I was a kid.
Oh yeah,
there are very few people my age who are vaping.
Sure, yeah. Which you shouldn't be putting anything in your lungs.
At the same time, you also need to do some things like the state EITC, and the increase in the roll back some of those corporate tax cuts, business tax cuts at the high end to balance that out to make the tax system progressive.
Right.
But you're going to have a hard time with any of these when you've got Tim Armstead sitting up there in the speaker's chair. I mean, he's just going to gavel the shit out of that.
Oh, there you go, Dan. Jeez
Louise. Again.
We almost made it. We had 30 seconds left in the show. You couldn't make it. Anyway.
Sorry, folks.
It's all right. We're going to leave it there.
Just call me Mr. Fleeting Expletive.
We're going to leave it there, guys. I got to thank everyone for coming in. Dan Heyman, public news correspondent. Thanks for coming in. Ted Beottner, Executive Director for the West Virginia Center of Budget and Policy, and Mike Pushkin.
And for the record, I wasn't the one who said the bad word.
You're not. You never are. You never are. You're perfect.
Oh, shit.
Oh, what's you doing? All right. Well, this is the last episode of Mountain State Update, everybody. Thank you for listening. Anyone want to...
FTC, if you're listening.
Right.
You can call me.
So we'll be back next week. You're listening to WTSQ 88.1.
Who's Trump put in charge of the FCC now?
Good question.